Hey guys, it's time for yet another pool plan video. In this video, I will be covering my pool plans for the banners and events where Selh'teus and Fujin will be the primary featured character. As always, there will also be a timestamp in the video description, so you can use that to skip ahead to the section that you are most interested in. First off, a quick look on how I did in recent banners and events. First off, starting with Anna Crow, I did get quite lucky with Anna because I actually did not even have her FR, and I got both her FR and PT with just 15,000 gems investment after the free multi-pools, of course. Since I got pretty lucky with her, I decided to then go for Noel on the other banner, and unfortunately I had to spend 40,000 gems to score Noel's PT. And the irony in it is, after that, when I went to upgrade his BT, I realized I already did have Noel's PT from way back again. So essentially the 40,000 gems is a waste. I actually did score Noel's FR on the free multi to boot, so I didn't actually have to spend the 40,000 gems at all. But anyway, hindsight is 2020. Gems have been spent. But overall, I think it's still pretty lucky outcome overall, just 55,000 gems spent, and I can live with that. I decided to skip Struggle and Lock. I don't really have a lot of interest in them, so no gems or tickets spent on those two banners. Okay, so if you've seen the recent live stream from the developers, the very first character that or event that we'll get will be the one featuring Selh'teus from Final Fantasy XI. Selh'teus will be a new unit in the global version of the game, and he's essentially a DPS with heal and battery utility. Well, I guess you can also look at him as potentially a support with very good DPS. It's really just two sides of the same coin. He does good damage and he's also a good support unit overall. Since Selh'teus is a new unit in the game, I'll quickly run through his entire kit and try to emphasize more on the parts that is very interesting, at least to me. First off, starting with his S1, it's an AoE HP attack with 5 HP dumps. This attack also heals the entire party based on the damage that was done, and any excess healing will get converted into brave gains instead, so essentially none of it is wasted. If you don't need the heals, he will instead battery the party. This attack also grants him one of his trademark framed buffs. I just put there Phoenix, but I think it's called 1/2 of the Phoenix or something like that. But essentially this is a buff that gives auras to the party. His S2 is also an AoE HP attack, but as a trade-off here, it does one more additional HP dump compared to his S1, but doesn't have any healing or brave battery in the kit. So essentially, if you don't need the heal and you want to do more damage, you should press his S2 instead of his S1. His S2 also grants him the same 1/2 of the Phoenix buff. Selh'teus EX is a non-attacking EX. I think an easy way to look at it is that it is pretty similar to Garnet's EX. So his EX is instant and is also free turn, but it is extremely powerful as a support EX ability. It completely revives the rest of the party members, heals everyone to 100% HP, and also batteries everyone to 100% max brave. Upon using his EX, he also replenishes one skill use of his S1 and S2, and his EX use also charges 20% EX meter for the entire party. Selh'teus EX also has a unique buff tied to it that provides even more auras to the party. Selh'teus LD is also really pretty noteworthy. First off, it batteries the entire party before doing damage. His LD is a whopping AoE HP that has 10 full dumps across all enemies. Notably, his LD buff also has a Kitsif-like effect, which is whenever any party member does brave damage, they will also get bonus brave gains on top of that. This buff also provides the entire party with brave and HP damage plus 20%. Interestingly, once you have his LD call ability does everything that the regular LD does. That's right, his LD call does the full AoE 10 HP dumps across all enemies, and after use for 2 turns for the entire party, it has the Brave HP damage plus 20% and the Kate Sieve Brave Gain bonus like effect. His BT is also pretty special, and this also means that if you really want Selh'teus, you probably need all his weapons including his BT weapon as well. First off, upon use, Selh'teus BT will debuff all enemies in the field with an 8 turns gold framed debuff. This debuff is an action disabler, so the enemies won't be able to act when they get their turn, and when the enemies get their turn, they also suffer an HP poison effect for 1% of their maximum HP, and it also carries a defense minus 30% and HP damage resistance minus 30% effect tied to it, so it's a pretty loaded gold frame debuff. Selh'teus BT Aura also provides the standard BT Aura effect to the entire party. For Selh'teus, it is Brave Gains and Brave Damage plus 50%, HP Damage plus 20% and HP Damage Cap plus 30%. If that's not enough, on top of that, Selh'teus also gets a new modified HP attack called Crystal Diver whenever his BT Aura is up. This is Selh'teus' hardest hitting attack, which is also why his BT is really required. It batteries the entire party upon use and is 11 full AoE HP attack. This attack also heals the party based on the damage that's done, and similar to the his S1, any excess healing will be converted to Brave Gains, and this attack also extends Selh'teus buffs by 1 turn and also charges his EX meter by 20%. Finally, moving to Selh'teus' FR. His FR will heal the entire party by 80% of everyone's maximum HP. Upon use, the FR effects has 2 conditional. Whenever you do a magic brave damage on your turn, you get plus 40%, and if you happen to end your turn with at least 100% of your max HP, you get another plus 40%. Overall, it's a pretty decent force weapon in my opinion. Of course, the first conditional is a little bit restrictive because it requires magical brave damage, but it shouldn't be too hard to build a party consisting mainly of magical characters. And even if, say, one of your characters is physical, melee or range, it's still not end of the world because you still have the second conditional for the one character. So Selh'teus' force time shouldn't be hampered too much even in that scenario. There is also a secondary banner on this event featuring the twins from World of Final Fantasy, but the twins will not be getting a rework or any new weapons here. They already had their FR and BT released some time ago. All characters on both banners will also get their force level 50 unlocked, which is pretty notable since this is the first event with force level 50. My plans here is actually just to go for Selh'teus' LD because I do like his LD call ability, and that's probably something that I may build in to a number of my runs in the future. Make no mistake, I actually think Selh'teus is really very good, but I'll cover more onto the reasons why I decided just to go for his call ability only at the later part of the video when I cover the character evaluation and how I will rank those characters. As I mentioned earlier, you can also use a timestamp to skip ahead to that section if you are interested. Next up, we have Act 4 Chapter 5 Part 2 featuring the return of Fujin and Zidane. Both characters will be getting a rework. Fujin herself will be getting a new BT, whereas Zidane will be getting a new FR. Starting off with Fujin will get a rework across her entire kit since she's a little bit dated at this point. So her S1, S2, EX and LD will all get a damage rework. Her LD in particular will get 1 additional use and will launch upon use. Even Fujin's FR gets a pretty sizable rework, not only in terms of damage, but her force conditionals are now much better than it was before. In the past, when Fujin's FR first released, it was one of the worst FRs in the game because the conditionals required only Fujin to launch an enemy, and that's for 40% and wind elemental damage for plus 20%, which means that on the rest of the party, when they get their turn, the most that they can get is only 20%. The FR conditionals has been sizably reworked. Now not only Fujin but anyone in the party who launches an enemy will give you the plus 40%. The Wind Elemental conditional has been bumped up from plus 20% to plus 30% now. On top of this, there is actually a third conditional that is newly added in, which is whenever you end your turn where at least one enemy was knocked back, you get plus 20%. Essentially, it's actually really pretty much the same as the first conditional. So this means that if you can fulfill all three, you get plus 90% force gauge bonus. And it is actually very easy to meet all three conditionals on any party member, because Fujin herself is a Wind Elemental enchanter to the party, so the second conditional should be a given most of the time. And in terms of launching an enemy, that's where Fujin's newly released BT comes in. This does mean though that if you really want to use Fujin in your main party, you really do need to pull for her BT, because it is very synergistic with her force time as well. Fujin's PT lasts for 8 turns, and first of all, it makes so that when any party member attacks an enemy, that attack will guarantee a launch. This is very similar in effect to Seed Ranger's force time effect. On top of this, and this is something very unique to Fujin, Fujin's BT also doubles the wall splat damage bonus, or I guess the wall smack, or whatever you want to call it. You know, when you launch an enemy, at the end of the launch, the enemies will hit an invisible wall in the air. And in case you weren't aware, when the enemy hit the wall, hitting the wall actually provides a bonus multiplier to the total HP damage done in the entire launch sequence. And the damage bonus is dependent on how many party members participate in the launch. To give an example to illustrate what I was saying, for example, the total launch does 1 million damage, and if there were 2 participants in the follow-up, normally the wall splat damage will give a plus 20% damage bonus, so you'll be doing 1.2 million damage instead. In most cases, the most that you can get is 2 follow-ups on launch. However, there are characters that can provide an additional third follow-up, such as Seed Range and Aranya, who has a special in-air follow-up attack. And if you have 3 characters doing the follow-up, you get plus 25% instead of plus 20%. Now this is under normal circumstances, so if Fujin's PT aura is active, this damage bonus is doubled, which means that if you have 2 characters following up the launch, you get plus 40% instead of plus 20%. And if you have all 3, for example, if you have Aranya in the main party and she does the launch, you get plus 50% damage bonus instead of plus 25%. The wall splat damage bonus bypasses HP damage cap entirely. It doesn't care what your HP damage cap is. All it looks is the total damage that the launch does, and it provides the multiplier on top of that. This is a very sizable damage boost, especially since in the current meta, most characters have no trouble hitting the HP damage cap, so Fujin's PT allows you one way to raise your ceiling even higher than it was before. As with all BTs, Fujin's BT also provides the standard party auras. In the case of Fujin, it is the Brave Gain plus 50%, Brave Damage Overflow plus 50%, Brave Damage Cap plus 50%, HP Damage plus 50%, and HP Damage Cap plus 30%. Fujin herself gets an additional HP Damage Cap plus 50% on top of this. Moving on to Zidane. Zidane also gets a rework here, and he gets a rework across his S1, S2 and EX. The notable one really is his EX, because now it is 12 HP dumps overall, and his LD also gets a damage rework. Unfortunately for Zidane, as a damage dealer, I have to say his S1, S2 and LD has very few HP dumps. They range from 6 to I think 7 or 8 HP dumps at the most, which is a bit lacking compared to other prime damage dealers in the current meta. Zidane's BT, which normally lasts for 10 turns, now has been reworked to also provide additionally Brave Damage Cap plus 50% now. HP damage is now plus 50%, the entire party gets an additional HP damage cap plus 30%, and Zidane himself gets an additional plus 50% HP damage cap up. Zidane gets a new force weapon on this event, and upon use, Zidane's FR will firstly reset the enemy break status, so his FR essentially re-breaks the enemy. It also lands his trademark 6 turns debuff Thief's Mark, defense down and speed down, and will buff himself 6 turns thievery, defense and speed up. Essentially, it's Zidane stealing the enemy's defense and speed. Zidane's FR has 2 conditionals. The first is if you attack a debuff enemy during your turn, you get plus 40%, and the second is if you were to attack a broken target or if your attack breaks the target, you get an additional plus 40%. At least the one thing that Zidane got going for him is that both his conditionals are very easy to meet, more so that his FR already lands debuffs, so the first conditional should be there most of the time, and it should be pretty easy to always ensure that the enemy enters a broken state for the second conditional. Additionally, if you attack a debuff enemy, you also get bonus HP damage plus 20% and HP damage cap plus 20%. My plans here is to go for Fujin's FR and BT, and I will be likely spending tickets for it since it's been some time since I last used tickets. In this part of the video, I'll be covering my opinion and evaluation across all the characters that's released, as well as my opinion on which character will likely give you a better return if you have limited gems or tickets or ingots. As always, big disclaimer, regardless of the evaluation, generally the best approach is to try to fill in roles that you currently don't have in your roster, because having a wider roster generally is beneficial in this game. Now, there are 4 characters that's released across these 2 events, so there's Fujin, Selh'teus, Twins and Zidane. And I'll start off first with Fujin. I haven't placed the character in the good value category for the longest of times. Generally, I only rate characters across 2 categories. The first is the good value category. These are characters that I think will give you a great return on your investment regardless of who you already have built in your roster, just by virtue of how good they are, or perhaps maybe they have a very unique kit overall. The second is the role fulfillment category, which are characters that are still good, but depending on who you have in your roster, you may be able to do fine without them because other characters can potentially do the same thing as these characters. So coming back to Fujin, she's placed in a good value category mainly due to how her rework is really very monstrous. First off, her FR conditionals have been greatly fixed, which is a welcome sight. She was really one of the worst FRs in the game back in the day, and now she is actually one of the best, if not maybe even the best, because she's I think the only character in the game that when you hit all 3 conditionals gives you plus 90%. Of course, not counting force gauge charging abilities, which normally gives a bonus on top of that, but plus 90% is really very good. And because her BT now guarantees launch regardless of what attack you do, it is actually very easy to meet all 3 conditionals and get plus 90% regardless of who else you bring to the party. Fujin's BT, also having the unique mechanic of doubling the wall splat damage, is really very good. No other character in the game has this yet as far as I know. And if you have characters that specialize in launches such as Aranya or Seed Rains, they will be very good combination with Fujin as well. Next up, we have Selh'teus. Now Selh'teus, I actually really place him half and half between the good value and role fulfillment category. Now make no mistake, his entire kit is really very good, and the fact that his modified HP attack does 11 full AoE is really one of the strongest attacks in the game. So you could also do something like BT plus into BT mode and just spam that attack for 6 turns in a row for massive damage. And the fact that while you are building up or setting up, he can also battery and heal the party is also no understatement as well. Plus also the fact that hitting BT plus lands an 8 turn disable on the enemies, which buys you a boatload of time to complete setup. That being said, as I mentioned earlier in the video, my plan really is only to go for his LD only, and the main reason really is just due to playstyle and preference. If you've seen my runs, generally the approach I like to take in battles is to quickly build force gauge and then do no boss turn runs, so trying to kill off the boss as quickly as possible in as few turns as possible as well. And if you are doing no boss turns, this means that Selh'teus's gold frame debuff really has little to no value. You don't need the disable and you don't need the HP poison if the boss is not getting any turns. On top of this, while Selh'teus has extremely good utility in heals and brave battery, same thing, if you're not going for any boss turns in your run at all, it is likely that you will take little to no HP damage, in which turns you don't really need the HP healing at all. And the brave battery is nice and all, but it's not something that you ever really need as a mandatory conditional to win the fight anyway. So all in all, as a matter of playstyle, I don't really think I need Selh'teus. He does very good damage as well, but as of now, I feel very comfortable with my DPS roster, and I will be going for Fujin anyway, and Fujin herself is very good DPS, or I should say she's a good DPS enabler. Now that does depend though, that's why I put Selh'teus in a half and half. If you are fairly new to the game, for example, then Selh'teus is really in a good value category, just by virtue of the fact that he does so good damage and he does so good support as well. Means that he can fulfill one of both roles, or maybe even both roles in the same fight, which helps a lot when you are at a time where you don't have a lot of different roles built in your roster. Likewise, if generally your approach is to take multiple turns, or you tend to do runs where the bosses tend to get a lot of turns, then Selh'teus's value I think shoots up considerably, because in that situation his gold frame debuff comes into play once more, and it is of big help. The 1% HP poison I think shouldn't be understated as well. 1% may not seem like much, but in an era where the bosses have like 200-300 million HP, 1% equates to millions of HP damage just when the boss gets their turn. At the very least, I think you should at least pick up his LD, because his LD call looks to be one of the best call abilities in the game. Overall, you can't really go wrong with Selh'teus. If you pick him up, he can really plug and play in almost any 3-party teams, just by virtue that he doesn't need much to get going, and he also enables the rest of the party with his heals and battery, plus being a very good character on top of that in terms of damage and support. Moving on to Twins, unfortunately the Twins doesn't really get a rework here, so I think at this point they are more in the role fulfillment category. If you've never pulled for Twins before and you have nothing of their gear, I think it's probably a better approach to go for Selh'teus instead of Twins. That being said, if you have Twins FRBT already like me, then this is just a free upgrade because they will be getting Force level 50. They still do pretty well, and they still do specialize in AoE attacks, so if it's a stage with 3 enemies for example, then the Twins will do extremely well. That being said, they are really not mandatory. There's a lot of other characters who can do AoE HP attacks anyway, which places the Twins really right smack in the middle of the role fulfillment category. Finally, we have Zidane, and it's really a sad day for Zidane. My opinion really is that Zidane really didn't get enough of a rework to justify his role as a DPS. There's really no reason to pull for him, because on these same events or banners, you already have Fujin and Selh'teus, and both of them will really out damage Zidane anyway. It also doesn't help that Zidane is kind of like a speedy turn hogger character, which means that in force time he tends to burn through your force time turns pretty quickly. The only saving grace I guess is that he's released at a time when force retain will be also released, so at least if he burns through your force time, you still have the force retain mechanic after that. But it's not really a good thing for him, it's just so that doesn't feel terrible when he burns through your force time. Yes, Zidane's EX is very good damage overall, but unlike other characters such as Null or Lightning where they get instant EX, Zidane will have to recharge his EX every time. On top of that, Zidane will also get an instant turn when he breaks an enemy, so if he uses EX and he breaks, Zidane gets another instant turn, and then you really don't have EX to press again, so you will have to press another button, and all his other attacks really does subpar damage compared to that. Yes, Zidane can also delete the enemy's turns, but really there's no need to in the current meta. In most fights, the bosses die very quickly, and at most they get 1 or 2 turns, and in many cases don't even get a turn. And anyway, if you're concerned about the bosses getting turns anyway, then you might as well just go for Selh'teus and use his gold frame debuff rather than have Zidane try to delete the enemy's turns. Not to mention that Zidane's turn deletion is single target, you can only delete 1 turn at a time. For these reasons, really I place Zidane on the far right. I'm not even sure whether he should even be appearing on the slide, to be honest. I don't think he is really worthy enough to even consider pulling for. So he is one of the safe skips if you haven't pulled for him before. I know that there may be Zidane fans out there who may not like this evaluation, but looking at it really, when you have to use a character that does like 6 or 7 HP dumps for damage, why not use one of the other characters that can do 10 or more? It wouldn't be that bad if Zidane has some utility to him, but really the limited utility that he has doesn't really compensate for the lack of HP dumps that he has throughout his kit. That's it for this pool plan video. In summary, I plan to only go for Selh'teus LD, mainly for access to the LD call ability. I will be going for Fujin's FRBT, hoping to get both with tickets. As for the Twins and Zidane, I plan to skip both. I already have the Twins fully built, including their FRBT green, and I don't really have a lot of interest in Zidane, so it's an easy skip for me. That's the end of this pool plan video. As always, I hope the video has been helpful, and if you enjoyed the content, do leave a like, comment and subscribe. It really helps a lot. Till then, I'll catch you guys in the next pool plan video. Bye!